The shift to containers in Kubernetes and computing enables a whole new set of capabilities for companies. Portability and flexibility, multi-cloud capability, and an increase in developer productivity are just a few of the great benefits. However, as with any new promising technology, there's often a skills gap that any organization needs to address before it can successfully adopt a new service offering. And that's where managed cloud services can help with the container adoption journey. All right, so let's talk about a managed Kubernetes offering called Azure Red Hat OpenShift, or Arrow. And let's talk about how to deploy Arrow quickly using an Ansible playbook. Just to reemphasize what I said in the intro, there is a large skills gap in the Kubernetes arena right now. And one of the biggest concerns in the container adoption journey is the lack of in-house skills and limited IT resources that a lot of companies are facing right now. Additionally, two of the most important questions that ops people should really care about is how secure is their current Kubernetes cluster? And can you make the most of those resources to scale resources up and down on demand? So, what is Azure Red Hat OpenShift? Well, it's a fully managed OpenShift cluster monitored and operated jointly by Microsoft and Red Hat. It has multiple compliance certifications such as PCI, HITRUST, FedRAMP, and SOC 2. And it's available in 20 regions worldwide, and Azure Gov is in tech preview. So why use Arrow? Well, as I've already established, managing Kubernetes, any Kubernetes, is challenging. The focus should always be on the developers and not managing and operating a Kubernetes cluster. And finally, you can leverage, by using Arrow, you can leverage the excellent SREs at Microsoft and Red Hat to ensure reliability. So why use Ansible to deploy Arrow? Well, Ansible is very simple to use, and no special coding skills are necessary to use an Ansible playbook. You can also use Ansible to build consistent and repeatable Arrow deployment. Finally, everything you can do on the command line is repeatable within Ansible. So let's talk about the requirements for doing this demo. You'll need a Microsoft Azure account. You'll need a Microsoft AZ command line tool. And you'll need enough resources or quota to provision a cluster, which means 36 vCPUs at a minimum. But I recommend 40 to 50 vCPUs just for some growth if you want to try out the scaling function. Additionally, you'll want the Ansible command line tool for your platform of choice, and also the OpenShift OC command line tool for your platform of choice. And finally, this is not really a requirement, more of like a recommendation. You want the ability to create your own OpenShift DNS, although you can use the default DNS entry if you like, if you just want to try this out and just kind of poke around. So, with that, let's get started. The instructions for the demo that I'm going to walk through here, it's all available on GitHub. And with that, let's get started. The first thing you'll want to do is fork my repo into your own Git repository, or alternatively, you can simply just clone mine to your local desktop. I do recommend forking, that way you can make changes and push them back. Open up your terminal and type in AZ login, which will take you to the Microsoft Azure portal page to authenticate. After successfully authenticating through the Azure portal, switch back to the terminal where you'll see the details around your Azure account. While we're in the terminal, let's run an AZ command to make sure that I have enough vCPU quota in my account so that I can deploy Arrow. As you can see here, I have up to 50 vCPUs, which is more than enough to deploy Arrow. Next, let's go to console.redhat.com, log in, click OpenShift, Downloads, and download the pull secret to the same repository that contains the Ansible playbook. So let's open up the Ansible playbook now and make some customizations to the variables listed at the top. I'm going to change the location to Central US because that's closest to me. I'm going to give the resource group a name. I'm just going to call it Arrow. I will call the cluster Arrow Cluster. The domain, I'm going to use openshifthealth.com. That's a domain I used, but you don't actually have to use that. You can actually comment that out if you like. And then I can specify the sizes on the control plane or master size and the worker nodes to use certain Azure VM resource types. Next, I can customize how many worker nodes I want to use. I need a minimum of 3. And then finally, I can specify the disk size. 128 is all you really need. That's all CoreOS requires to install. And that's it. Now I'm ready to deploy. To kick off the deployment, I'll use the Ansible playbook command and the name of my playbook. The Arrow deployment process takes around 20 to 35 minutes. So I'll speed up this video and we'll just get right to the end here. Okay, so after about 25 minutes, our cluster is now ready to go. And in the output, you'll notice the kubeadmin password, as well as the kubeadmin username. And then also, you'll notice the IP addresses, and you'll need to make some DNS changes so we can access the cluster using the URL that we're going to use for this demo. Okay, so I popped over to Cloudflare and I created my DNS entries, and now I'm able to access my cluster. I can log in with the kubeadmin username and password that was provided in the console, and voila, I can access my fully managed Azure Red Hat OpenShift cluster. Once you're done experimenting with Azure Red Hat OpenShift, you'll want to delete all of the computing resources that you deployed to your account because there is a meter running. I have left a simple to use AZ group cleanup command that will delete all of the computing resources that you deployed in this exercise. You can of course do this through the Azure portal as well through point and click, but I find using the command line to be much easier.